So we left our program in a bit of a broken state. What we want to do is prompt our user to ask how old they are. We know how to do that as we've done that already, right? But there's a slight problem. The method that we've been using, readLine, well, that returns a string. But as we know now, when dealing with numbers, we want to use the integer data type. So somehow we need to get an int from a string. I know. How about we ask the internet and see what we get back?
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a search for exactly what we're looking for, which is Java get an int from a string. And we'll take a look at what we got here. This very first one is from an article called Stack Overflow, which is a great resource for developers. Let's see if it's indeed what we're looking for. It says here, how does one convert a string to an int in Java? That is exactly what we need. Let's see, I have a string which contains only numbers, and I want to return a number which represents it, which is what we want to do because we want to use the int to be compared in there. So let's go scroll down to what the answers are. So as you see, there's 17 answers, and this one has 1,000 votes. You can upvote if it worked for you, and then there is a check mark saying that this worked for that person. So let's see if it works for us. So it looks like you use this integer.parseInt. Oh, look, there's a link to the Java doc. Let's go ahead and click that. This is the actual Java documentation. So let's see. So it says that parseInt will return an int, and it takes a string, which is what we have. This looks like exactly what we want. Let's go ahead and let's jump back over to our code. And let's pull out the age from the line. So we're going to pull out a string first. So we'll say console.readLine, and we know that that gives us a string. We'll say, how old are you? Great. So now we have age as string is a string variable. So let's go ahead and let's change this int age that we have here, and we'll say integer with a capital I dot parse int, and we'll pass in that age as string. Great. And now I'm going to save it. Let's see if that worked. Compile and run. And it says, how old are you? So let's try and make sure that it fails. And we'll say 10. Great, that worked. Let's go again one more time. And remember we said, so if they're older than 13. So let's go ahead and say that we're 15. Excellent, it started working. So if you're in a program that's executing like this, you can always press Control-C and it will stop.
Great job leaning on the internet. We now know how to parse integers out of strings. This is also referred to as converting a string to an integer. Switching between types is also often called casting, which we'll cover in a future course. You also did a great job ignoring the fact that we introduced a new class, integer, with a capital I. In the past, we were using the all lowercase primitive data type int. We used the new integer class's static method, parseInt, to generate a primitive int. This capital I integer here is what is known as a wrapper type, or a boxed type. And what it does for us is it provides some methods that we can use to manipulate and produce integers. Remember, primitive data types do not expose methods, so there are these wrapper classes for every one of the primitive data types. Again, the other data type that we had worked with in the past was string. We're going to need to explore the methods available to us, because I'd also like to do something about those names I was being called during our beta test. But first, let's do an exercise on parsing integers.